All right, today is Thursday, January 13th, and this is our design meeting. This is our last design meeting before the release of Backdrop 1.21.0, which will come out in 2 days on the 15th, which we're very excited about. So if you have any design or user experience focused issues that you want to get in, now is the time. There's a whole bunch of activity in the core queue, which is really exciting. A whole bunch of issues that have been around for a long time are getting reviewed and merged, which is super exciting. There's nothing. Well, let's go through some introductions first, and we'll get back to the agenda later. So I'll go ahead and go first. I'm Jen Lambton. I'm joining from Oakland, California. I'm working on a ton of Backdrop projects right now, and I'm really excited because I find an issue and then I go to report something on it and someone else is already working on it, which is fantastic. So I love seeing all of the activity that's happening right now. Let's see, I think I don't have anything else exciting to share. So let's turn it over. You want to go next, Robert?
Yeah.
I'm not...
Sorry, my sound was cutting out, so I didn't hear. So I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California, and I'm pretty excited about seeing all the stuff that's gonna come out in 1.21. And I've been working on rules and UberCart to help get new versions of those out at about the same time. Jim.
I am Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim on the internet, and I am in Deerwood, Minnesota. And gosh, I've been, well, a little bit recovering from a flurry of Backdrop core issue stuff about a week ago. So I haven't had too much time this week, doing a lot of client work though. But yeah, so it's good. Let's move on to Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a backend developer from Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, just here to see how I can help out. Martin?
Hi, I'm Martin from the UK, Yorkshire Pudding on the internet. I'm just generally interested. I'm not particularly working on anything UX at the moment. And go to Justin.
I'm Justin. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and just help out with the infrastructure usually. I thought I'd lurk in this meeting today. I think that's it. Back to Tim.
Wilbur.
Or Jen, sorry.
My name's Wilbur. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm just, popping in to lurk in anticipation of the next meeting.
Great. So we don't have anything on the agenda today that's particularly important to talk about, but because there's a bunch of people here, I wanted to see if anyone had any favorite issues or attention on. If not, I have a handful, but I'll give anyone else an opportunity to raise theirs. Okay, so I'm going to pull a few from the 120.4 milestone that haven't seen any activity recently, but that I would really like to see get in. Add a warning if your site is exceeding the number of maximum variables allowed by PHP. This is something that has bit me more times than I would like to admit, in particular with Drupal 9 sites. But the default value for PHP is relatively low. It was set that way 12 years ago as a potential mitigation against a security issue that turned out to never have actually been used. And so Drupal by default has a bunch of forms that are massive. Backdrop has those same forms. So things like the user permissions matrix can have hundreds of checkboxes on it. Things like the menu system where you reorder your menus if you have a lot of items in your menu, that one gets out of hand. Same with taxonomy term listings. And if you go to submit that form and there's too many elements in the form, the post variable that goes into PHP will exceed that limit. And what happens when that limit is exceeded is the post variable is just truncated. So like the bottom half of your form submission just goes away and your site doesn't throw any kind of error. It just doesn't work right. Like sometimes half your menu items won't be saved. Sometimes all of them will be put into the wrong order because of the way the menu order reordering works. If your form had different behaviors based on which button you push, like whether it was the save button or the delete button, and you've removed that button from the amount of data that's getting submitted to your server, it can do very strange things. And so this is a super dangerous problem, potentially causing data loss, sometimes causing data corruption, and really hard to diagnose because there's no kind of error handling it or anything on the server that indicates that there was an issue. And so after this got me for like the third time, I went into both Drupal and Backdrop and I wrote a patch that adds some special handling that can check your maximum number of variables that are allowed and then notifies you if that's potentially an issue. It'll put a log in the database log and it'll print an error on the screen if that form you're about to submit is likely to cause problems. Request could use code review because in order to get that messaging on the screen and only once rather than multiple times when you submit a form, there's some custom handling in there that like checks the messages that are going to the screen and sees if it has duplicate text and only prints it if it doesn't. So it's a little messier than most pull requests. Would love to get some eyes on that. And then I also how to adjust their maximum of input variables. If someone could reduce that down to a couple hundred or something in order to generate those errors and make sure they're appearing where they're supposed to, that could use some additional testing too. So that variable is set in PHP INI, which can, depending on your development environment, like we aren't going to be able to test that in a sandbox, for example. You'd have to do that in a place where you can control that yourself. So that needs a little review. So that's one of my favorites. It's issue.
Which
number?
3824. And I can drop, there's a link in the agenda, I think. And I can drop one into Zulip if that's valuable.
Yeah, and just a quick point, Robert mentioned sound cutting out, and I'm hearing that too, so I don't know if it's your mic, Jen, but it's not too bad. I hear about 95% of what you say, but every once in a while there's...
Okay, let's see. All right, I'm using a better microphone now. Does that sound... So far, so good. Okay, let me know if it cuts out. I can also switch back to the computers.
Sure.
All right.
I know that one place to test this is on the modules, user permissions page.
Yep.
Yeah, which turns into a massive form. That's usually where it gets triggered.
That's a good place. Okay. Anyone else have any other issues before I keep going with my own?
As someone who feels a little bit over their head with this issue, is this something that's realistic to get some help on it? We've been in a couple of days or not?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's been in sort of a ready state for a while. I'm running it in many production sites in both Drupal and Backdrop, and it hasn't caused any issues. So I'd love to see it get in. I think the issue is that it needs like sort of a thorough code review on it, and that it's hard to test. You can't just go into like one of the pull request sandboxes and test it. So it needs local testing, which is also sort of hard for people in Backdrop to do because just pulling down the branch is complicated. So yeah, it just needs
what's the issue number again?
It's I just dropped it into Zulip. Where did it go?
Okay.
Here, 3824.
Okay.
Okay.
I might take a look at that.
Thanks. That would be great. All right. So there's another one here. This is a follow-up from something that went into Backdrop 115, which is where we added more options for how to control our responsive drop-down menus if you want them to open on hover or on click. And we had some trouble with the language for the checkbox there and spent a bunch of time working on improving the checkbox text, and we've gone back and forth, I don't know, a ton of times. And so it would be good to get some more eyes on this issue. It's number 4253. current status is it looks like we have a radio instead of a checkbox where it describes the two behaviors. The first one is open menu with touch or hover, and the second menu is open menu with touch or click. And we want to make sure that those descriptive options make sense to people. We also changed the label on that form element. It used to be drop down behavior. It looks like some people are leaning towards drop down opening behavior. Other people are leaning towards drop down menu trigger. So just what do you call this thing? Naming things is hard. So more good ideas we have in how to do that would be useful. I'm gonna drop this issue into Zulip also, maybe on the agenda.
I have one I can mention too.
Great. Do you want to do yours next?
Sure. 3339, it's show a message when viewing hidden pageless note content. So we had a PR that was RTPC. What this does is, but it's not anymore. What this issue does is just if you have permission to view pageless notes or hidden notes, it puts a message on them reminding you that these pages are not visible. And it seems like a really useful thing, and it seemed pretty simple. I took over a stalled PR that was mostly just text, and Herb Duo found some problems with it. Apparently, we need to add some permissions checks, and there's no way. It sounds to me like what needs to happen is pretty simple, but I don't think there's any way I can do it in the next 2 days. So
Okay.
I just want to mention if anybody wants to and is able to help with that one, it would be great.
Okay.
If somebody gave me detailed instructions on what I needed to do, I might be able to try and fix the PR, but right now I don't even know where to start, even though it's fairly simple.
I think I can probably give you some pointers on that. I can add a comment on the pull request, and then you can probably take it from there.
Okay, be willing to give that a try. I have limited time, so. Okay, that's the only one I had.
Great. Greg's not here, is he? No.
Greg said he couldn't make it. So.
Okay. There's this issue that he'd been working on for a while about merging the manual updates section into the updates table. I don't know where that stands. It looks like it hasn't had any activity for a little while.
If anybody is, well, most of us are all pretty experienced at this, but a good thing to do is to go through the bug fix milestone and look for issues that need testing, or code reviews. If you're able to do code reviews, I usually stick to the testing, but that's a really helpful thing I think to do at this stage, a couple of days before a deadline.
Okay, well, those are all the user experience issues in the 124 milestone. I'm just going to look at what's going on in general. Oh boy. Project installer needs steps indicators. Oh, should we ask about this? Last week we were talking about the help text for the homepage field. Tim, you thought you're like, oh, I'll just throw in this quick text change, and then the incomplete issue got derailed, and we managed to get we're like, remove the text, we're just going to get the issue done, and then we had a follow-up on the text. Do you want to talk about the follow-up issue?
Did we actually create the issue yet? I mean, there is a follow-up issue. I don't remember if it was created yet. But the issue was sure, we could talk about that briefly because potentially we could make that better before we could still get an additional change in, although there is no PR yet. This is the homepage. Oh, I don't know. It's on the system settings page, right? It asks for the path to the home page. And there has been a lot of confusion around that, and it does some weird things if you don't understand it. If you understand it, it's pretty straightforward. And to solve some of the major problems, we just made that field required, because in the past, we had a situation where it said, like, leave it blank for X to happen, but then X wasn't happening. And so we started out trying to fix it so that X would happen. And then we decided, you know what, there's just no reason for anyone to leave this blank. Let's just make it required. And then that really solved the problem. But we need some help text there. And I don't know what more to say without having like it in front of me. Other than, one of the problems, the text that I had suggested that sort of started to derail it was something to the effect that whatever you set that home, that the home page is going to use whatever layout is assigned to the path that you assign there. And Jen pointed out that this is confusing because in theory, the setting doesn't have anything to do with the layout. And my rebuttal was, but most of the time when you change it, it does affect layouts. So the goal is how to better communicate to people the impact of what they're doing there. I don't know if it's helpful. Jen, dig me out of this hole.
Sorry, I'm looking for the issue. I think the main issue went into 1.
It did just get committed, so it should
21.
be recent. Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Default homepage
Actually,
path required. And then here's the follow-up. It took a little while, but here we go.
Oh, there is a follow-up already.
Yeah,
I did.
4839. Took me a minute to get there. Help people understand. So my recommendation, which I think, well, I don't know, I hope it will help people understand, but we'll see, would be to specifically test for the default use case, which is where we have the word home in there, and we have a layout at the home path, because in that particular instance, we know we've set it up this way, there's a layout that does this homepage, and if that's the scenario where we have that current combination of settings, we can add some help text that says, by changing this path, you will not use the homepage layout, or whatever language we want. But without the word home in there, if it's anything else, we don't know whether changing that path would change the layout or not. Like they could be using a default layout on every page on the site. They could be using a special layout for nodes. There could be any number of visibility conditions on those layouts that might make them activate or not activate. So because that is the most common use case for, all fresh installs will start that way, I think it makes sense to add that descriptive text for that scenario. But once we're no longer in that scenario, I think mentioning that it's going to do something that we don't know if it's going to do could be problematic. It could cause more confusion for people who are already confused about layouts. But there are other use cases we might also want to test for that would get special descriptive text in there. But I think that for starters, what we might want to do is add some generic text that will work for all scenarios, and then add that specific use case where we know it's home and we know you're going to be breaking the homepage layout if you change it, and then leave it at that for the first commit. And as we come across other scenarios in the future where we think we might have more help text we want to offer people, we can add additional checks for those additional scenarios and add the descriptive text sort of in a case sensitive way where we can check for how your site's configured and add that text. So yeah. I don't know if there's any actual recommended text in this issue yet.
No, I think part of, and I'm just
No.
going to mention this because other people might, sort of my frustration with this was that, like, I can write a PR that just adds some help text that may not be great, but it helps in a serious situation. And these conditional things is harder for me to do.
Yeah.
So when it's frustrating, but I understand why, and I'm not saying I'm right, but it's frustrating when I've got like something that I feel like is an improvement that's a simple text, and then somebody comes up with, well, we should do something much better, and I can't do that. And then I feel bad because I can't do the thing that should be done, and I just want to make it better. So, but I think you're right that the better solution is better. Go ahead.
And I think there's probably also a better solution that doesn't it isn't dynamic, but it would need to be really carefully worded to indicate that like this might be the case, it might not. And I think that is also hard to do. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely much easier to do nothing than to do like incremental changes, which is why we just sort of went that way for the initial pull request just to get it in. But I agree, there's a lot of room for improvement there, and we can do that too if that is the next step. Rather than adding the conditional stuff, we could add something that's not conditional, that's just slightly better than what we have now, knowing that we'll add the harder stuff later.
In talking about all of this in the past, one of the things we talked about was that, and I think, Jen, it might have been you that originally raised this issue, is that really that people don't need to use that as much as they think they do. That one of the problems is people are coming from Drupal and they think they need to change that setting, and they don't really need to. So BW Panda at some point suggested kind of hiding that and putting it into an advanced tab. And that would take care of a lot of the problem if we just made it less obvious to people that, you know, that setting, because really anybody who doesn't understand what that setting does probably is misusing it. Or, you know, or misusing is the wrong word. There's probably a better solution for them that they don't know about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I didn't think about hiding it until Peter mentioned that, but I think it's a great solution. I have personal objections to using the word advanced to hide things, but I agree that hiding it in some way would make things better. It'd be like, what you want is not over here. Yeah. Okay, so if anyone has feelings on what that language should be, I think there's still time to get that improvement into 120 also, 121, 1.21.0 if we wanted. Okay, let's see.
Give me that issue number again.
4839. I'll drop that in the chat. I just got signed out. Does anyone else have any other issues they want to talk about?
I don't know whether it's specifically UX. I kind of thought of it as a bit of a UX issue, even though it's not labeled as such. But the comments and being able to disable the comments, I don't. There's been quite a bit of discussion, and I think there's some pull requests on it, but I don't know if anything needs doing or if there's decisions that need to be taken on that before it can go forward.
That would be a feature request, so we couldn't get into this next release.
No, no.
But we certainly can talk about it now. If we've got nothing else to talk about.
I think that is perfect, because I actually just implemented that exact solution to that problem on Monday. And I saw it come up today and I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was this core issue, or I might have worked on the core pull request. So thank you for drawing my attention to that, Martin. But the problem is that we don't have a content type wide setting for enabling or disabling comments. So for my use case, this is a session event website, and people wanted to add comments on sessions, but only for a period of time, and then they get turned on, they get turned off. And in order to do that for your site, you have to go through and edit every single session and be like, session comments off, comments off, comments off, comments off, and it's a big pain in the butt. Whereas if we had a setting on the content type form, it would be like, enable comments now, and then all of the comments for that content type got turned on. You could do that all at once. Same thing for turning them off. And then we were also going to add an option. So if you didn't want to modify existing content, you only wanted to change the behavior for all new content, you could have that option too. So my use case would be turning them all on or all off all at once. But there were other people that had other use cases in there where they just wanted to change the setting for new posts versus current posts differently. So let's see, do you have that issue number handy?
3016.
So I think the pull request that's on here is an older one.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah, it's quite a way back, isn't it?
So it'll probably at least need a rebase,
Yeah.
but I think that the solution that was implemented is a good one.
So, Martin, just a suggestion, when you come on an issue like this, that's been kind of sitting there for 2 years, sometimes what's really helpful is to write a summary, although it looks like actually Klonos might have done that right before you, so maybe it wasn't necessary here.
Yeah.
And this one isn't that long, so it's not that hard to go back on, but.
Yeah.
It certainly seems like a sense. I think I've been in this situation before too, and it seems like a sensible idea. To note or keep an eye on this issue and see if I can help.
Yeah.
Let's see, there's some comments here in the chat. Oh, it's nice posting issues. Nice dragon.
Robert, how did we do on all of the various layout help text improvement PRs that we had going? Did they mostly get all committed, or?
I think there's still one 5077, I think, is still in, it's not merged yet. There was a help text. Let me take a look real quick. 5077 is, yeah, 5077, which was, it needs both code review and testing. And that was, and it's got 2 competing PRs. I guess we needed to get enough consensus as to which approach. One approach was to keep the same label, the same order, one list of layouts. So this is the layout configuration page, the layout listing page.
Mm-hmm.
One PR was keep the same listing of layouts, but denote each one individually, whether it was an override or a layout created page. And the second PR was to segregate into 2 lists, one of layout pages and the other of layout override pages. And we have, I guess, have received a diversity of feedback on those.
Right.
Some people saying, oh, I like the extra organization of having 2 lists, and others saying, well, that just creates more structure that I need to wade through. I think there are visual examples of both. And yes.
Yeah, near the end of the issue, I'm looking at it right now. There are some screenshots.
Yeah. So I guess on this one, we just need to somehow drive to enough of a consensus, or else I guess EMC can say that one.
So that's pretty much the blocker on this, is that we just haven't kind of come to a consensus on which direction to go, right?
Yeah, I think we have workable PRs for both.
Well, Jen and I both have recently offered opinions. Maybe if some more people jumped in there and just took a look at those 2 options.
These are both your pull requests, Robert, is that right?
I
I
think
thought
one
you did
was yours.
Yeah,
I thought so
I
too,
thought one
but
was yours, Jen.
Although it may have been, I may have,
Maybe he
I think
redid
you
yours.
redid
I may have
it.
rebased yours. Or,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this one's yours. This one might have been mine. I think mine had some issues with it and you fixed it for me. Okay.
yep, they're both mine now.
Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quick if it's okay. And these are the two, right?
Yeah.
So this is, Robert, describe what is happening in this image.
Okay, so in this one, everything is in one list, and we're adding the information next to the path about if there's no information, it is layout provided page, like admin dashboard or home. And if it is an override, it's overriding a page provided by a module, then we add the parenthetical module provided, like node/%. And if there is no callback, which is possible to find yourself, then it's listed in red, as you see for the admin structure contact path. So that's the single list version. Now, if you scroll down a little bit, we'll see the double list version, which has two categories of layout pages, which are the ones that are provided by the layout module, and then layout overrides, which are ones where the page is provided by some other module, and then but the layout will apply to that, will wrap the content of that page.
Forgive my ignorance, but what's meant by no callback? What's meant by callback?
So
Yeah.
it's possible to have a path that backdrop. You can end up with a layout that has a path, but there's nothing in the system that provides the content at that path. And so I think if that happens and you try to go to that page, I don't remember, you get an error or else something that's confusing. So and it's possible to get, ideally you shouldn't be able to create a layout that has no callback, but in practice you can. And probably the easiest way to do that is to enable a module that provides that path, create a layout that overrides that path, then disable the module, so that the content callback goes away. But the layout is still sitting there with that path, and so it will continue to show up in the layout pages, and can be very confusing then if you don't somehow highlight that, because you think, I'm going to put a bunch of blocks in my layout, and then you try to go to that path and you don't see anything. So that's why we highlight it in red.
Yeah. I think that is a bug, and we'll probably come up with some way to fix it later. But I think until we get it fixed, having some visual indication on this page that something's wrong there is important. So that's why we're addressing it here.
And the likelihood of that happening, is it very high?
Well, I think
Just an exceptional case.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty easy to automatically disable a layout, but we would still need some kind of indication here that's like, why is my layout not being enabled? So yeah, it's just something to tie those together, but I like this solution. Another thing to address your question of missing callback, I think that's something that a lot of people are going to wonder about, like, what does that mean? I think the fact that it's red is enough indication to tell you that something's wrong. Right. Callback is the name for developers, like menu callback is what happens when you have a menu item and then a function is called in order to generate the content of that page. So that's like, if you're a developer and used to working with the code, you might know what that is. If you're just someone who's using Backdrop, you might not. But this is a true statement of what's wrong. We can fix it later in terms of adding more description text for, trying to help people understand what it means. We could also try and fix it in this pull request if you felt strongly that we needed more description there. But this was sort of our first attempt at being like, oh, there's something wrong here. Let's indicate that differently. So that's the first most obvious language to use in that scenario. But I understand it is still confusing.
I think I've said this before in my comments, which is that, to be honest, I'm not sure that either of these tell me anything that's that useful to me today, because I'm still a little bit confused on everything. But when I look at this first version, it really doesn't help me at all, other than the red. I see red and I know something's wrong. So that is definitely helpful in either one. The fact that the second one sort of breaks them in these two groups, again, I'm still not quite sure how I'm going to use that information, but it at least helps me think about, oh, so there are two different types here. And I don't know, it sort of feels to me like I understand something, although I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with it. Whereas the first one, I means nothing to me. Like, I don't see anything helpful for me here. That doesn't mean that there isn't something helpful for other people. Obviously, Robert, you must think that there's something. So,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think this, the one that's on the screen now was my first attempt. And it was just, I wanted to provide more information to build the mental model of layouts, because layouts are a very confusing thing coming from Drupal, and they were very confusing to me when I came from Drupal. And because dividing things up into categories is a really solid way of building mental models. I like the second one better, because even at the cost of having more structure on the page, because it makes it clear there's two different types of things going on. And and if you don't understand those two different things, it can be really confusing as to, like, why don't I have a main content block on the layout that I just created, but the one I created 10 minutes ago had one? And and this sort of division helps.
Yeah, and I think we can definitely improve that, like in the help text too, in the future, Tim. I think, this isn't supposed to be a finished project, but I think this idea came from an earlier issue that Phil raised, where he was also really confused about layouts, and we were trying to figure out how to separate them. And I think at the time we talked about like different tabs, or like there's a whole bunch of different options for how to separate different types of things. But this was what came in my mind at that time, and I don't think I accurately described it, and I don't think any pull requests were written. So when I saw Robert approaching the same problem, I was like, wait, I had an idea about this. What was it? And so then when I went to write this pull request, it was really like, I just want to have, this is what I had thought about before, and I want a place to write it down. And thank you, Robert, for bringing up the issue again, because layouts are still confusing, and I felt that this was a step in the right direction. I also have some issues with the order in which layouts appear on the page, but I thought that this was a better organization of the way things work than what we have currently, especially on existing sites that get a lot of layouts. I find it really valuable to have those like dedicated landing page standalone layouts at the top, because those are usually the ones I'm after, and then the ones that are overrides for node types and stuff get, less manual edits after the site's launched. And so I was happy with this organization. So I don't know.
I'll just say, for those who haven't been watching closely, there's been a number of PRs in the recently that Robert has been behind a bunch of them to help make marginal improvements that hopefully collectively will add up to big improvements in making layouts more understandable. Just adding help text in different places and things like that. And even the one the one we were just talking about, requiring that the homepage be set, I think is going to help people understand layouts, or at least avoid pitfalls. So so this is just one of several PRs, and I don't know if any one of them by themselves would make a major impact, but together I'm hoping they will, that they'll make the layouts more understandable. If anyone has time, go look at this issue and see if you have some thoughts on it, because I think that's the only thing blocking this right now, is a little bit more consensus. It doesn't sound, some people have had a strong opinion towards the first one, preference towards that. And that's why we haven't been able to pick.
I could just weigh in and say that I like the layout separated between the layouts and the overrides. It seems even if that page gets, even if you have 10 or 20 layouts, it's not that much more. And it does provide a pretty good visual indicator of what you're looking at a glance. Rather than the first one, there's a lot of information there, but you can't pick it out easily.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think the second one's probably better, and especially the fact at first I was like, what's layout pages and layout overrides going to mean? But you look at the description underneath, and that makes complete sense, and brings it. So I think there's enough there that it's clear, and it yeah, the two are very, very distinct. So, and I think having the fact that you've got the path on the second one, and
If
looks
y'all
good.
could just go through a sentence into the issue, that would
Yeah.
be great, because
I will do.
and I think we can claim majority.
Yeah,
And
and
that
if you,
second layout, it still respects the hierarchical override of the layouts.
yeah,
Yeah.
So a completely accurate picture of what's happening. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, that's issue 5077. So jump in there and make a quick comment. Maybe we get that into this next release.
I'll drop that into Zulu too. All right, we are coming up on the end of the hour. No one has anything else urgent to talk about. I recommend we'll wrap this meeting and get ready for the next one.
Let me make a follow-up comment, which isn't an issue, but Robert. So Robert and I had a little bit of offline chat about layout stuff a while back, and decided you wrote a blog post, didn't you?
Yeah. I
What?
I sent it to you.
Right. And I think we kind of, wasn't it sort of on hold because of all of this stuff that was in flux, or not? Is that ready to go?
No, it's ready to go.
Okay.
It was on hold briefly because of some questions of terminology like path alias versus URL alias, but I think we settled all those.
Okay.
And so I think it's accurate now.
So what you're saying is that I'm the blocker on this. Is that you were just waiting for me to give you feedback?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we, so we don't have a draft on backdrop.org yet, do we?
No.
No, you just gave me some text. So why don't I get it up on backdrop.org, or one of us, so that other people can look at it as well and maybe provide some feedback. Maybe it would be great to release that right after the release when some of these help text changes go in. We can, not that it needs to, but it's only a few days away. Okay, so Robert has a great long, well, I don't know if it's long. He has a detailed blog post that's sort of meant to help people, a beginner, understand some of these issues. Thank you. No, that's it. I just wanted to raise that. Should we wrap up the meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Let's sign off. I'm going to hit the end button. Bye, everybody. See some of you in 5 or 10 minutes.